YM Theology. So glad you could join us. I have a special guest here with us today. This is my wife, Krista, and she is going to talk about being the wife of a youth pastor a little bit, and she's also going to talk to youth pastors about maybe one or two things that maybe we should be thinking about. And I have given her permission to embarrass me a little, but hopefully not too much. And so I'm just going to ask her some questions, and she's going to respond. Hopefully some of this will be helpful to you guys. So talk about how your role has changed from a ministry standpoint over the years. And we started out doing ministry together almost from the time we met.
Right.
And so talk about how that role has changed over the years from early on in youth ministry to what it is now, and how that has affected you.
Early on in ministry, it is funny because we were young college, not even 20. And
not even 20. We were like 17 and 18, actually.
I was 18.
She was 18, I was 17.
But what's so funny about it is I remember going John I thought he was cute back then, and so I thought, oh my goodness, these young little kids are hitting on my guy, and yet it was funny because he wasn't my guy at the time.
But I became your guy.
Yes, you did. And I didn't think, actually I probably didn't think as young they were young, because we were still young. But as the time went on and we became older and still working with youth, they then became young, and you still have that feeling of insecurity of going, your husband or fiance at the time too was working with teenagers and having all of these young girls sometimes seem like they swooning over him, and he's so nice and so kind, and so a lot of that is, you really have to trust your mate. And, for John and I, we just really talked to each other, and, whenever I felt insecure, he was really good about saying, well, I married you, So sometimes hearing words of affirmation like that are important for your spouse, especially when in our today's culture it is really tough when you have girls that don't dress appropriately. And, it's really hard to...
Which, by the way, if you look on the winetheology.com blog, I got a letter, or a Facebook message from a girl who was in our ministry about 8 years ago, I think it was, about that time, and regarding that very issue and about being modest and those kinds of things. So you can just look that up and read it. We don't go dive into that here, but how's your role changed? So early on, we did ministry together. We were a team. We were always there at the same time at programs and things like that.
And then you get pregnant.
and then you get pregnant. And that did change things for us significantly. And then, of course, having our daughter, Katrina. And so how did that change things?
Well, you go from the freedom of, we became a dog family, but you didn't have to go to take care of the dog all the time. And when you have a child, all of a sudden, one of you has to go. Well, it's not going to be the one who gets paid to be there.
Right.
And so a lot of times that was really hard for me to really not feel like I was missing out on something. Over the years, I have learned to enjoy that time by, doing more behind the scene things or spending time in prayer. That is as important as being there too. And of course, when you do have kids, take advantage of pulling those teens aside and having them come alongside you at home. I remember some of the greatest talks that I had were when girls just popped in and, held the baby, or we just talked while we went to a park or something. You just have to take advantage of, you have a child, but you aren't like a diseased, bedridden person,
right. Well, and one of the things that changes, even though you weren't at a lot of the program things, you still had relationships with a lot of the girls. And now, even today, not as much the high school girls, although you have some relationships with some of the high school girls, but we do college-age ministry as well, and you have a relationship with several of the college-age girls. And you really still maintain that. You've been kind of in and out in different life stages when our kids have been in different stages as far as how your involvement was and things like that.
I think for today's ministry, if you have a job or you have children, you can totally connect with the students because they're texting, they're Facebooking,
Right.
you know, they have phones, call them, you know, you don't have to be segregated.
Right. Right. So even though now you're really hands off in a lot of ways, and I have, and it was an adjustment for me too, in the sense that we had been doing ministry so long together that she just kind of knew what I needed, and I knew she knew what I needed, and so a lot of the things that happened
it was
were
probably
unspoken.
better I was not there, just because you just go in and you just do stuff and you don't think, oh, all these other people want to know what their role is.
Right, right. And actually, when you backed off from some things, it was difficult for us in a lot of ways because I expected things that other people had no way of knowing I was expecting. And at the same time, though, as I grew, so did my staff grow, and they started to fill in some of those blanks as I learned to communicate where I needed things and needed help. And so it was good. It was good to have you because we're a great team when we're working together. And even today, you help with different things, parents' meetings and things like that. And so we're a great team, and we still have that connection. But because of where she's hands off, it also has helped me as a leader grow, and has allowed my staff to grow as well. And so there's benefits, and then there are difficult things as well.
I think one of the things that I especially learned recently is, you know, when you know what your passion is and know where you thrive, if you aren't doing what you should be doing, if you step away from it, you'll know what your passion is the most and what you are most effective in. And you know, it's a tough thing, and yet as a parent, you know, this is a season. You know, our kids are going to be both in school next year.
Right, and that's going to change things for us as well.
It's going to change it again, and probably for a good timing, just because we know the potential of our ministry growth. We have some things in place to have, you know, more
growth.
need for me to be more back in, and time-wise, season is going to come back.
Right. Yeah, and so talk about some of the things. One of the things that you struggled with, and you already mentioned it, was some insecurities and things like that. And that's just a good reminder for you guys to have boundaries. One of the things she knows is that I have some pretty strict boundaries. I don't give girls rides home. Now last Tuesday I did, but it was with another staff person, and it was the only reason I did that is because it was a snow night, and
It was
so
brutal.
It was a brutal. We had like a foot of snow in about an hour and a half or something, or 2 hours or something like that, and I have four-wheel drive, and so there was a girl that had showed up because it happened right before youth group, and so Nate, my intern, and I both drove her home because her mom couldn't come get her. So that was a special circumstance, but most of the time it's just no period. And then there's even recently I had a girl come and give me a hug, and it was too much of a hug, and so I looked at her after she was done and said, you know, you really can't do that, and explained the boundaries. And so I have boundaries, and she knows that. I think that helps.
Yeah, I think, you know, as like with any ministry, whether it's youth or children, you know, really training your staff to like, if a student comes to give you a front hug, you just direct them and give them that side hug, you know,
Right.
and to just know that, you know, there are some serious boundaries, but to make sure that, you know, the hardest thing is most youth pastors are they have charisma. They have the stature of friendliness that people feel loved and cared for.
Right.
And because of that, you know, there's a security. You know, so many girls are looking for that male role model that's, if they don't have a dad, or, you know, things like that make them just drawn to the youth leader. And to really, you know, be able to talk to your spouse and say, you know, you come across like you would die for them. And you would. You really would. but that comes across more as, I mean, they're going to look for that physical affirmation, you know, any kind of, you know, touching a shoulder or anything, a hug, you know, they're looking for that. You know, and so it's really in your mind as a staff, as a husband-wife team, whatever it is, know what your boundary is and talk about it regularly.